And then I hear a voice say, shoot it.
Tonight's encounter is one of the strangest I've heard in a really long time. I've got Curtis with me, and Curtis is a Navy veteran, but back in 1987, he was out hunting with his dad on a property in Pennsylvania, and they ran up on a Bigfoot creature, and this thing was less than 10 feet away from him. He heard a voice in his head tell him to take a shot at this creature, and he did. We're going to get into every single detail, but since that night, he's had a lot of strange encounters throughout his life, and we're going to talk about all of them. But before we do, I just want to say thank you for being here with me and listening to this podcast. If you've got an encounter you would like to send me, you can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. But let's jump right into the story.
I go back to December 5th of 1987. It was my first morning hunt, and I was excited. My dad's always been a fisherman, a hunter. I wanted to be like him. I got my license, and the summer of 87, first day of buck was November 30th. And he told my mom I'm taking him hunting, you know, and she asked when? Monday. That boy is not missing school to go hunting. You need to pick him up after school. Okay, so he picked me up after school. We went out the evening hunt, didn't see anything. This was in a different area of Coatesville, Pennsylvania. So that Friday came to pick me up, spend the night to go out Saturday morning. So we drive out to a place called Ursulton, and that's about 20 minutes, 25 minutes from where my dad lived. Nothing but woods, nothing but woods. And we get there a little after 5. We're walking down a trail, and we walked a little ways, and he kept shining his light to the left in front of me. And there were these thumbtacks that was reflectors. And we finally get to a spot, and he said, okay, here. We walk into this patch of woods. First of all, this is the first time I've been in these woods. First time I've been out that early in the morning. So we walk up in the woods. He starts clearing a spot at this tree, and he said, okay, stand here. Just watch my light. He went back out, started walking back up the trail where we came from. And I'm like, where's he going? So I'm watching him. Then I see him come in the patch of woods. He flashed his light 3 times. So I'm looking to my left, flashed his light 3 times. Soon as his light went out, directly on my right, I hear a bunch of crackling, like bubble wrap, like several people. So I whipped my head and I couldn't see anything. It was a bunch of thicket. Then I heard the first step. Now I'm looking around 2 o'clock, waiting for more steps, but I didn't hear anything. There was a tree branch hanging down. So I'm looking at this tree branch and a bunch of thicket. Now I can see this pitch black figure coming in front of that branch that was hanging down. I guess it was about 5 feet off the ground, but it bowed. The tip of it was about 5 feet. So I saw a black shadow, and it was silent, but it's moving. And I'm looking at it. So then I'm making out, I'm like, is this a cow? So I took my eyes off of it and looked around outside, like, is that a field? And I'm looking for other cows. I look back at it. Now it's moving, moving, slow, with no sound. As it got almost in front of me, it started pivoting. So it was a full moon, but the full moon was back. It started pivoting, got directly in front of me, and I can see the width of the shoulders, I guess, and a long, snout. So I'm saying, is this a horse walking sideways? It didn't make sense, and it was ugly. I mean, how this thing, a horse walking sideways. So as I'm looking at trying to look at the There was no eyes, there was nothing. It was just pitch black. But it looked like it was a horse head. So now I see the back coming up, and I saw the left buttocks swinging behind it. And I saw the leg, the thigh, it was bent. And then I hear a voice say, shoot it. I had a 410 shotgun, bolt action, 3 slugs, directly in front of me, about 10 feet. But there were weeds up. I guess they were up about 2 feet high. Soon as I shot, the flash went. I hear my dad yelling my name, Kurt, Kurt, Kurt. I mean, loud. And I'm bolt. But when I got my sight back from the flash, it wasn't there. I look up and I just saw a silverish, grayish, the back shoulder. And I mean, that tree branch that was hanging down, it was above that. The reason why I was able to see that, because the moon was shining over those patch of woods we were in. That's how the light from the moon was able to give me that. And it was like this. It wasn't like walking. It was like it was on an escalator. And I was able to see that in the back straight, just gliding away. My dad made it to me out of breath. What are you shooting at? Like, I don't know what that was. That could have been a person. I said, that wasn't a person. And I'm out of breath. He said, all right, I'm going to stay here with you. I mean, I'm out of breath talking about it. I mean, I'm shaking up. The whole time we heard crackling, we heard walking, and he's looking around. Now I'm paying attention to his demeanor, and he's like on high alert. The sun finally came up. He walked out, but I paid attention to how many steps it took him to get out there. Now I can see there's a field in front of us. We was in a patch of woods that was probably about 30 feet wide. Took him about 7 to 8 steps to get out there to the edge. And I said, right there. And he's looking down and he said, there's no tracks. There's no blood. I said, what? So I walk out and I said, it was standing here. There were no tracks. So I said, okay, well, he got up over here. So we walked over. When he looked and saw that matted down area, when we saw that matted down area, and I'm looking at him. I looked at it, and he was like, all right, come on, let's go. And we left. We left the woods. We left. So after that, we started going hunting in a totally different area. First of all, that house he took me to when we were younger to fly kites, because they had a field. It was like off a side street. They had an open field where somebody just stopped cropping. So I always wondered why these people had a dog box in the center of this cornfield with a goat tied up. I'm like, who has a pet goat? So that was weird. And the house looked haunted, but it was just a remote area, nothing but woods, both sides of the street for about 5 miles. So we didn't go back there for a while. We never went back there for a morning hunt. We always went in the afternoon. So we go to this other area about 20 minutes from there called Modena. He sets me in a spot. At this time, I always wanted to get in a tree because I'm like, I don't want to stand on the ground. And he's like, no, you. And then I watch him leave and he climb up in a tree. So I would hear walking and I'm looking around. There's nothing there, just walking. I'm talking regular walking, like another hunter is coming. And I'm looking and nothing's there. So the one day he put me on the corner of this trail. I couldn't see to my right. It was a fork. Across the trail, I heard a bunch of rustling. Like, I mean, something going to town. Like it was two. In my mind, I said, "There's two buck over there fighting," and then I can hear the crashing, you know, coming through this thicket. And then it was a trail, and I heard. So I'm saying there's two bucks stuck together, and the one buck is dragging the other buck. And it came in the patch of woods I was in, but I couldn't see because of the bushes I was in. And I just heard the crashing. Boom, 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 boom. So I'm like, well, maybe somebody shot an illegal deer, and they're trying to hide it. So after some time went by, my dad finally came back to get me. First, I'd like to address that. My son wanted to go hunting when he became of age. I told him no. And if I did take him hunting, you will never stand by yourself. I will stand with you until you're about 17, 18 years old. We'll hunt side by side, not only because of any kind of creatures, because of accidents too, you know. So when he finally came, I told him, he said, "Did you hear anything?" I said, "Yeah, something dragged something from out of that thicket." So we went over and we just found this large drag mark. So we went in where it came out and went in, and there was no tracks or anything. So over time, I'm thinking, is this how they cover their tracks? Because they had to walk through this dirt. Maybe it drug its foot. I mean, it was loud. So didn't see it. I just chalked that up like, that was another buck dragging another buck. So I left that alone. So come about 94, I see my first unidentified craft, flying craft. But it's kind of like minding my business. And it's like something would call me and I just look up and it's sitting there. Little silver craft with a little black smoke underneath, and then it just darts straight up. So I started seeing that craft over and over and over and over again. I would mention it to friends, hey man, I see this and this. So, people would label you crazy. They don't want to be around you. So my little cousin told him about it. He was interested. I said, look, I'm gonna pick you up tomorrow morning. I'm gonna ride around with me all day. I guarantee you'll see it. So pick him up that morning, drive straight to the gas station. We weren't together no more than 8 to 9 minutes. Pull up to the gas station in front of our intermediate high school. Get out, walk around the car to go in. Once again, call, and I look, it was right over top of the school. I bang on the trunk. Look, he jump out. He saw it, shot straight up. So that was 95. So the last time I saw it was 2005, stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. I was on a Dwight D. Eisenhower. We were parked in Pier 16. 15 was empty. 14 had the USS Roosevelt. I had 24-hour duty this Friday. We mustered, posted at 3:30, went to chow, go out on the catwalk, smoke. It was still daytime. Get out there, it's unusual. Nobody's out here smoking. I'm out there alone as usual. And I look right over top of the Roosevelt. There it was sitting there, directly over top of it. So I look. I didn't even, I saw somebody's belly. I'm like, I don't know who this person was, but he wasn't there. So I said, hey. And he looked, I said, come here for a minute. Came up and I'm pointing. What's that? Clear sky, no clouds. I'm like, what is that right there? And he's leaning to it. We're side by side. He's like, what? I'm like, right there, over top of the Roosevelt. I don't see anything. I'm like, look, now they're starting to move. It started going down flight deck. Now it was up pretty high, maybe 30 feet, 40 feet above the Roosevelt. He still said he couldn't see it. I said, okay. I mean, I was a little bit more aggressive, but I'm like, all right, never mind. And he casually walked back. And I just watched it go, went on a 45, went straight up. Now, fast forward to 2018, I was watching some declassified files, some program, because I always watch Bigfoot. I don't like calling them Bigfoot, first of all, but Sasquatch and UFOs. And there were a lot of Navy pilots that came and started opening up, telling, and mainly one was the Roosevelt Battle Group. They said they were followed by UFOs. And they said around 2005, 2006. So that's when I saw it over top of the Roosevelt in 2005. So there's some other little things that went on in between there that I won't go into that stuff, believe there was a chip, but got it removed in the military because it was I mean, this thing was painful. It was like I got shot with a BB on the left side of my leg. If I bump it or scratch it, it takes a slight delay and the pain is unbearable. Drop to my knee, tears in my eye. So got to Fort Meade, Maryland, and I said, look, I have this thing on my leg, I need it off. They performed the surgery with me a week, just numbed it, sliced it, stitched me up, send it off for biopsy, we get back. About 2 weeks go by, she calls me. Yeah, it's lipoma, something like that. She said it's only common in African Americans, you know. I'm like, really? She was like, yeah. I said, well, can I see it? She said, no, it's government, belongs to the government now. So I'm like, no, something don't sit right with that. I don't know what this thing was. But anyway, so there was a whole lot of other stuff that took place, but I won't bring that up. My mom just passed in February, so I I just can't speak of that stuff that happened back then. But going back to my dad, in 2022, Father's Day, my dad came over. My wife cooked us dinner. We went, sat on the patio, was talking, and he said, "Remember that time you shot at something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can't forget it." He said, "Well, I never told you this, but I went out there one afternoon hunt. I guess I was in school." And he said, "I had an eerie feeling that something was watching me, so I stopped. And I started scanning the woods and I focused on this tree. And this big black face, big black head peeked from behind the tree. And I turned around and took off running." And I was like, that's why we never went back out there again. We started going to these new areas. He used to work out, meeting people at Gold's Gym, and we would go to their houses. They would just have little patches of woods, things like that. But we never went back out there. So now he told me that. But going back to when I graduated high school, I started when you're in high school, you in Coatesville, there's surrounding little towns. You don't know everybody because there's three different junior high schools until you get to ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Then we all come together. So I met people that lived out there in Ursulton where I shot at that thing. And I asked, have you ever seen anything strange in the woods? They said, well, they used to tell us don't go in the woods because there were giant trolls. And I'm like, giant trolls. I'm thinking the little gnomes that's real big or whatever. So that was my way of fishing for information, because older folks, they wouldn't talk to you about encounters. I know my grandpop stopped hunting You know, then my dad, he's like, I'm not hunting anymore. And, and then they wouldn't let me go hunt with other people, my friends that I went to school with. So I'm like, I might as well stop hunting. So I stopped hunting. So when he finally told me that he saw that creature peek from behind the tree, this whole time I've been thinking, well, you led me directly to it, placed me here, 7 to 8 feet away from it. And then you left and went back up the trail closer to the car. Now, I'm talking 20 years that I'm thinking of all this. Like, then you said it could have been a person. So I'm thinking, well, did you try to set me up? You know what I mean? Like, now my mind is really, I'm confused. How many times have you been out there hunting before you I started hunting? So did this thing have some kind of mind control on you? I don't know. You know what I'm saying? I just started thinking of all kinds of things. And that's why I got a therapist and started talking this stuff out. So there was several different, you know, things that occurred. I, I'm glad I didn't see the eyes. I didn't care like the creature I shot at. If I would have saw the teeth, that wouldn't have bothered me. The eye shot, you know, I couldn't have tolerated that. So now we go to 2020. I had to put my mom in a nursing home, Parkinson's. She passed. So I built a house 10 minutes from where she was. I've never been out in this area of Bowmansville, Pennsylvania. This was a golf course that, Landmark bought and turned it into an estate. So we chose this lot. There was only one house down here. This is the front nine at this time. So as the house, no, I chose this other lot. So we would come visualize how we want to set the house up, which angle and all this other stuff. And this was nothing but like they had made the road, but all the lot signs were up. And it was just one house, my neighbor's was up. So we would always come up, just walk the property, trying to figure out what kind of trees, what we're gonna do. So there's one, it was on a slope. So there's one particular day, it was thunderstorming. So I told my wife, we need to drive out to the lot and let's see where the water's running. Because if it looks like we're going to have any kind of water trouble, then we need to choose another lot. So we hurry up, drove out, took about 25 minutes from where we were living. Come up, the storm eased. It was still lightning and a little thunder, but it was just a slight drizzle. So I get out and I'm walking. Mind you, I've been out here 15 to 20 times because we were excited. We're building a house for the first time. So we're walking this lot. And I come upon these stack of bones. I mean, big bones and I'm yelling to the car. I said, there's a bunch of bones here. And she's like, what? And she gets out, comes over, and she's like, this doesn't look right. I'm like, no, it doesn't. So we get in the car, go back to the spec house where the girl it was the office. I said, you need to come take a look at this on the lot. So she gets in her car, we drive down, we come up, took pictures of it and everything. So now my wife is really looking and was like, these bones are severed. Like they were cut straight. It's not many of us out here. So I'm looking around at the other development. Maybe somebody saw us out here walking and just was throwing, you know, I'm thinking voodoo or witchcraft and all other kind of stuff. So I'm like, what kind of animals do you guys have out here? She's like, well, there's fox and stuff. But my wife was like, no, these bones are severed. And these are big bones. So what kind of animal is this? So gave that lot up, walked around the corner, chose another lot. So we started building that one, got it up, moved in, happened to so we moved in 2021, went out in the backyard after a hard rain, and I see these two large prints, like the heel was sunk in, but they were to side by side. So I'm looking like, where did this walk up at? So I go get my wife, she comes and see it. My dad came to visit. I took him and showed him. So he's like, where these tracks come from? They just start. And then we walk. And I said, well, go around. And we watched the tracks go down towards the road. And I mean, these were far apart. So it was up near where our gas tank is, where the delivery guy would come up. But I'm like, this guy is not this heavy, you know what I mean, to be leaving these kinds of tracks. So we left that alone. We didn't worry about it. So one evening, me and my son was talking in the kitchen, in this room that I'm in right now, this window here. We're talking. He had his back towards this room, and all we hear is, "Whoop." And he whipped his head around, and I looked, and he's like, "What was that?" I said, "It was the refrigerator." I'm like, "Was that the refrigerator?" I mean, we're standing near the refrigerator. I knew it came from out there. And I said, no, it was the refrigerator. And I tell my wife about it. She was like, nah, I never let them go out. Well, this part of the development is already all done. So after the tracks, then that loud whoop, I mean, loud. It sounded like it was in my house. That's how loud it was. The first thing I did when I moved was put up blinds everywhere because I was here at midnight, 1 in the morning, and I always felt like I was being watched, because of my encounter. For me to go back to 87 and think of what would have happened if I wouldn't have listened to that voice. That's the first time I ever heard that voice. As stern, it didn't yell, it was stern, like a father figure, shoot it. And I did. I heard that voice again in 2000. I was in a bad place, said, it's time for you to leave and go to the Navy. But this time, I'm questioning it or talking back. I don't know how to swim. I'm going to get seasick. I've never been on a boat. It's time for you to leave. And it was a fantastic career. When I got to my 8th year, they switched our tour duties from 5 years, 4 years sea, 3 years shore to 5 years sea, 2 years shore. And they wanted to advance me to E6, but I already heard the voice. It's time for you to get out. That same voice. I said, okay. At that time, a lot of my friends and family members started passing away, but I was able to spend a lot of time with them. But if I would have stayed in and went to another duty station, another state, another country, they would have just passed away and then I'd have had to fly in. So listening to that voice, I don't I don't know what would have happened if I wouldn't have listened because I don't know what was going on with my dad. And when the sun did come up and we went out there, I said, "You didn't hear it get up?" He said, I heard movement, but I thought it was you. I'm like, no, that wasn't me. So he heard the noise, but he thought it was me moving around. It was terrifying. I don't know what it was, first of all. And why did I start seeing or hearing, because it was some kind of connection, just to do what I'm doing, talking to somebody, and just turn and look, and there it was. So for that kind of communication, you know what I mean? I know I didn't hurt the thing.
First off, Curtis, I got to say, what an incredible story, man. That is mind blowing to me, and I think you're fortunate to be here to share it, and I appreciate you sharing it. There's that connection, man. Again, and I hear that time and time a lot. I mean, people talk about these encounters, and then all of a sudden they start seeing orbs, they start seeing UFOs, they start seeing all this stuff. I know when I had my encounter, my dad had a UFO encounter years prior to that, and there's some connection. Why that is, I don't know. And once you see one of these things, the odds of you seeing it again go way up. And it sounds like that's what happened to you. What that reason is, man, I don't even know. But with you hearing that voice that night, I do believe that saved you, and I'm glad you've listened to that voice. But when this encounter happened, other than what you described, did you smell anything or did you feel anything other than just the obvious type fear?
No, there was no smell, and there was nothing. It was kind of like the third click of my dad's light. It was action. Soon as that light bing, that's when all that crackling started. And I immediately turned and looked. And all it was just the two steps and then everything else. So there was no signs. You know what I mean? I mean, dead silence, walking into the trail. That's just us, walking into the woods, our footsteps, walking in. And then we even spoke. Like, well, he was like, I'm going back, just follow my light. So whatever it was, it heard us talking, and there was no smell. But in other areas, I would always smell this musty, musty smell. And I haven't smelled it to this day. It just musty. It didn't smell like death. And then I would look around and I would see like the green moss on falling down trees and things like that. I say that stuff stink. So I would associate that smell with moss and broken down trees, But just that funky smell. But that day, no. But these other areas, yeah. And there, I always felt like something's watching me. I never felt comfortable.
I mean, I think you're right, man. I think something definitely was watching you. Why they connected with you, man, I don't know. I firmly believe that voice you heard was God. I think it was God saving you that day. That intuition. I'm glad you listened to that. But after you shot this thing, did you hear anything? Did it scream? Was there anything after that? Or did it just go silent?
Nothing, silent. It was just that pow when my sight came back and I looked up and just saw that left shoulder, the back, and how big it was. Never got to see the head when it stood up. Like I said, that branch was there. Nothing. And it was just like a glide. And how no tracks whatsoever.
It's weird, man, how that works. I know when I had my encounter, when I saw this thing when I was 14 years old, it glided out of the woods. It's the only way I know to describe it. There was no up and down movement. It was just like a steady glide. No tracks, no anything. And so what do you do with that, man? I don't know, but such a strange thing. Now, with your UFO encounters, you said that you just you heard or felt like you needed to look. What did that feel like? Was it more of a voice or just kind of a knowing?
No, it was just like I knew just to look. And there it was. And then it would be like, it was some kind of connection. I don't know. And my cousin, the one that I took for a ride to see him, he saw him up to the day that he passed. He was talking to me and he said, the ones I see now are way bigger than what we saw that day. And I feel bad that I actually got him you know what I mean, and took him for that ride that day, and he was able to see it.
Whatever that connection is, man, I don't know what you do with that. The only thing I know to say is there's so much in God's universe we don't understand, and there's a reason why people, I don't want to say get marked, but there's a reason why people have these encounters and multiple encounters. Like I've had 3, and then my dad had the UFO encounter. Like I don't, that's too big of a coincidence for it to not be something else besides, something we don't understand. I want to go back to the what happened on your property when you were picking that stuff out, the bones and then the 2 footprints. I had a friend of mine on the show, Daryl Adams. He had a property out in Al Moon Labs, and he talked about he would have prints on his property that would just, there wouldn't be anything before that or after it, just a set of prints. And so that's why I think maybe sometimes they're more than flesh and blood. But when you saw those bones, I know you said they were fairly big, but what kind of animal did it look like?
It was no skull. I mean, it kind of looked like forearm bone, uh, and they were just piled neatly, you know, neatly. Like I know you hear, you want this. I don't know, man. But I left them, and then we were moved in when it was already sold. We went back, told her no, we would like our deposit back. We're going to go with this one. They put that back up for sale. It wasn't even up a day. It was sold. So finally, I saw the people. It was a nice Indian couple, and we started talking. He saw me out cutting grass, and I explained to him I had the lot. He said, "I know," and the house I wanted to build, that was the best lot. He said, "I'm glad you did." So when I told him about the bones, he's like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah." So one day I was coming home from work, and it was like 20 people in the middle of the field, in the middle of the lot. They were on blankets, they were sitting down and everything. So I pull up and I see him, I call him. I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, ever since you told me that, the elders wanted to come and bless the land." And I said, "Well, that's a good idea."
Well, I'm glad that you didn't pick that lot, man. I think that was a wise decision. It reminds me of an encounter I had. It's been about 7 or 8 months ago. A guy came on and he had a lot of weird property or weird stuff happen on a property in Oklahoma. And he found what he described as a graveyard, a bunch of bones that were neatly piled up right in this area, and there was almost like this little stump that something had made, and he would place an apple on there, and it would come back, the apple be gone, but there was a bunch of animal bones that something had taken and cleaned up and brought to this property and left there. Not like a normal animal would deal. A cougar's not going to do that, or a bear. I mean, it was really odd, and so there's a lot of strange stuff, man, that goes around these creatures, and I don't know what you do with all that, man. And I'm dying to know, with as much stuff as you've had happen to you, man. What do you think these things are?
Well, sometimes it seems like some of them like to get a kick out of just playing, trying to communicate with you. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that's to bait you and lead you down a rabbit hole or into a trap, or it is like you always say, the Nephilim. Like I really don't know the job of the Nephilim other than they're the offspring of something that shouldn't have happened. And then their best way of getting back at mankind is to do what they do if they are already damned, you know, to their fate, their eternity, and some of them pure evil and happen to kill people. I don't know. I know missing 411 is interesting too, but are there portals? Are there cloaking? Like being out there, like I said, just hearing the regular walking, and I'm looking and there's nothing there. I'm talking 7, 8 feet away and nothing's there. Like I always think about the movie The Predator, Arnold Schwarzenegger, that was my favorite one. And how it actually tried to mimic Billy's voice, and mimic the voices, cloaking and things like that. But then it had a mask on. You're seeing that, but when it take that off, it had a regular face. So you go to Independence Day with Will Smith, those big aliens, but inside there was another little creature. So when the people see orbs and things of that nature, uh, is the Sasquatch body just a uniform, and it's something else on the inside? I don't know, man. It's like the technology is out of this.
That's a good way to put it. I think we're taking a bunch of educated guesses. None of us know for sure. We have lots of different opinions, and man, all I know is this is when they're flesh and blood, they're flesh and blood. And when they're not, they're not. And I know that there's too many people seeing these things in weird circumstances with strange things happening for there not to be more to it than just, there's got to be more to it than just flesh and blood. And I think maybe there's different kinds. Maybe there's kinds that are just that. And then there's the kind that are a little bit more than that, the Nephilim or whatever you want to do with that, man. I don't know, man. I just know that I don't go off into the deep woods anymore. I just won't do it. It's changed my perspective on the world. And, it takes a lot of guts to come forward and talk about this stuff, man. So I'm glad you did, because it's not an easy thing to talk about. And, Curtis, how has that affected your life, man?
I don't go in the woods anymore. I won't take my family in the woods. That's even with a firearm, because these things they learn and adapt. And I think they know more about me than I know about them. So I don't even go into the territory. There's some that said Bigfoot was in their house. You know what I mean? Like in the bedroom and with an alien. And I didn't even get into all that stuff because I don't like to talk about that.
I think that's smart, man. I think that sometimes when you do talk about certain things like that, you kind of attract some of that stuff. And so I think that's a smart call. But, man, it's so strange, man. And, I've heard a lot of encounters, Curtis, and yours is one of the strangest ones I've heard so far. And leaves you with so many questions, man. No matter how many times I talk to people, I always walk away with way more questions than I do answers. It's a rabbit hole. You start going down this rabbit hole, and it's just like poof, and it's life changing, man. You're never going to be the same, and it definitely has a profound impact on you. But I think one of the best things you can do is to come forward to talk about it. To realize you're not alone, that there's other people out there just like you that have these encounters. And so I'm glad that you came on the show, and I really appreciate you just coming forward with everything. What would you say to somebody that's sitting on an encounter and they're afraid to talk about it, man? What advice would you give them?
Well, for the ones who's afraid of it, if it's going like the lady that wanted me to do the hypnosis, I cannot do that because if I remember something that I forgot or it was intentionally put behind me, I'm not doing it. So if it's going to have you reliving something and it would cause more harm, don't say anything. But if you feel like you need to get it off your chest, somebody else experienced something, you go ahead and tell your story to people that want to hear it. That's not going to ridicule you or make fun of you. But for the non-believers, I hear a lot of people all the time, just go. Just go out there and look for it. I'm telling you, you're going to find. I didn't go look for it. It happened. But if you're a non-believer and you want to know, go out there.
Solid advice, man. Very solid advice. And you just never know what you're going to see when you step off into the woods, man. I think a lot of non-believers become believers really fast when they go to some of these places and they see some of this stuff. But Curtis, I appreciated you coming on the show. I really enjoyed that, man. I also want to say thank you for your service. I have a lot of respect for what you guys did for our country. My grandpa was in the Navy, so thanks for your service, man. And just thanks for being brave enough to come forward.
Thank you. Sorry I was all over the place, man. I had a lot to say, and hopefully it could be pieced together and, but yeah. Thank you for having me on, man.
Absolutely, man. Anytime if you see something in the future, man, let me know. Guys, thanks for hanging out with me and Curtis tonight. It's a strange world, and there's a lot of stuff in God's universe that go on that I don't think we'll ever understand. But it's people like Curtis that make it a safer place by coming forward and just talking about it. And, it takes a lot of guts to do that. And I really do appreciate him trusting me with his story and just coming forward with it. And like I said, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. If you've got an encounter you would like to send me, I'd love to hear it. You can send it to me by email at mysteriesunknownpodcast@gmail.com. Guys, there's a lot about his encounter that we didn't even get into, but man, it was such a wild encounter. I just wanted you guys to hear all the information from him, and I didn't want to get in the way. So, like I said, thanks for hanging out with me tonight. I'm going to say it. Stay prayed up, guys. We'll see you in the next episode.